Hey Film Buffs, welcome back to Film Feature 43. Today I want to talk about Santa Claus, and specifically how bad he is at his job. So the idea of Santa Claus throughout film is to remain hidden, but still get kids to believe in him without seeing him, so that he can retain his magic. But that's really hard to do when Santa isn't very sneaky. Whether he's kidnapping baby orphans, or landing on rooftops really loud to wake up parents,
Somebody's on the roof.
or going right through the middle of New York during rush hour, or even yelling "Ho! Ho! Ho!" every time he enters and exits a town, it's not very likely that Santa's gonna stay very inconspicuous for long. Or conspicuous, whatever the right one is. But the Santa that seems worst at all at his job, and the one I want to talk about in this video, is this guy.
What's that? Whoa, whoa.
And possibly every Santa from the time that Scott Calvin picked up the mantle, all the way back to 270 when St. Nicholas took his first sleigh ride. We find out from the events of the original The Santa Claus that Laura and Neil stopped believing in Santa at 7-year-old and 3-year-old respectively, which would be about 1960, 1963 time, all because they didn't get the toy that they wanted. Laura wanting a mystery dating game, and Neil obviously wanting a weenie whistle. And we know that specifically Laura wasn't on the naughty list because she claimed she got...
Oh, I got dozens of presents. Oh, I got everything.
Just not the one she wanted. And, well, as for Neil...
No weenie whistle.
And we know at the end of TSC that Scott knows what Laura and Neil wanted because he gives it to them. Which means that the Santa Clauses from the 1960s all the way to the 1990s knew what the kids wanted. He just wasn't giving it to them. And we see the same thing in the Santa Claus 2 when Scott's at the staff meeting and he's giving out the toys to all the adults. They wanted those since they were kids and never received them, which means that somebody's not doing their job correctly. Why would kids even write letters to Santa if whatever they're writing the letter for, they're not receiving? And every time we see the elves working on toys, it's stuff like slinkies and rocking horses and Raggedy Ann dolls, things that no kid in the 1990s or early 2000s would want, and definitely nothing that kids in today's society would want. We also know that Santa needs a Mrs. Claus, and Bernard is 1600 years old, and Curtis is 900 years old, and they just happened to forget to tell Scott that.
Wow. One mistake in 900 years.
Up until he's been Santa for 8 years, which is very odd to me. That either tells me that every Santa has came with a Mrs. Claus or has died in some brutal way.
They've had a rough night. There's been dogs barking, guns going off.
Before they were there long enough to need a Mrs. Claus. I tend to lean towards they came pre-Mrs. Claus because there has been about 1,750 years since Santa's been around, and there's 60 snow globes about floating around in the Santa Claus snow globe room in Santa Claus 3, which means that Santa is Santa for about 30 years on average, which lines up with what we see in the Santa Claus universe, because Tim Allen's Santa Claus is looking to retire after being Santa for about 30 years. So either there's never been a Santa that wasn't married before, or the Santas that have come pre-married, their tenure just tends to be longer than 30 years, so it kind of stretches out longer, and the ones that fall off the roof before 8 years are in the minority. It's possible, I guess, that elves have like a 30-year memory maybe, and that's what helps them cope with Santa dying every so many years or retiring. Maybe Curtis and Bernard just forgot because they have such a short memory, but I tend to think it's just because this last Santa really sucked at his job. And I've talked about the weird Mrs. Claus aspect to these films in this video, so I won't get too deep in the weeds about it, but the fact that Curtis,
our number 2 elf, the keeper of the handbook,
didn't remember that Santa needed a Mrs. Claus,
overlooked the single most important detail in the history of Christmas.
Until 8 years post Scotty C. And this guy clearly didn't have a Mrs. Claus, leads me to believe that he wasn't Santa for more than 8 years, because that's how long it took for the desantification process to happen to Scott. But it's also very possible that, noting back to Laura's missing mystery date game, that there's just been a string of bad Santas.
Yeah, I'm Santa. Come on, what do you want?
No, not that one. possibly that one. But there's been a string since the 1960s that haven't been giving the children the toys that they wanted. Because I wouldn't exactly call Scott's first time out as Santa a success. I mean, he knocks over a tree and wakes up kids and almost literally gets shot for trespassing.
Who's down there?
But he did such a better job than the last guy that Comet gifts him with a rope so he doesn't fall off the roof, which I will note he didn't give to the last Papa Noel. And also, every time that Scott is about to quit, the elves have a meltdown, or whether he's going to be fired because he doesn't have Mrs. Claus. Even when he hasn't even got to the North Pole yet, they're very upset that he's not going to return and continue to be Santa Claus.
What if I don't buy into this Santa Claus thing? What if I choose not to believe it?
Then there would be millions of disappointed children around the world.
But when the last guy took a swan dive off a Chicago roof, they didn't really have any emotion at all. It didn't seem like they cared that the last guy was gone. Speaking of falling off a suburban Chicago roof, in the third movie there's a ticker behind Scott that says 378 years without an accident. Wouldn't you think that your old boss falling to his death would be considered an accident? Unless they didn't care about this guy at all, and maybe they saw it as a happy accident. So the last guy, the elves clearly hated, the reindeer didn't think much of him, and going back to the kids for one more piece of evidence, in the second Santa Claus, when Scott is losing his Santa-ness, the Easter Bunny says that
Kids are 86% happier since you've taken the job.
He's absolutely right.
87% is a big number for a satisfaction rating to go up, which leads me to believe that the older Santa was doing such a poor job that Scott could literally come in and just throw Raggedy Ann dolls underneath everybody's tree and they'd be happy. Everyone in the Santa Claus universe, from the elves to the kids, to heck, probably even the parents, are happy that the old big red guy's gone and there's a new guy in town, and that is why I believe that the old Santa Claus sucked. So guys, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.